Okay, welcome to a Friday afternoon live stream coming from Denver. We're going to be talking about some tips today when dealing with, writer's block, I guess is what I would call it. We're going to be looking at how to overcome that the 8 bar syndrome, where we create something that's really cool, but it's short. And how do we take that and expand it out into a full song? So that's what we're going to be looking at. I hope this is useful for some of you. We're going to be making March back. We're going to be taking March and making it more into a live stream month. And so we took a little break from doing a bunch of live streams, and I missed it. I missed having the live stream experience with you. So here we are. We're going to be upgrading a little bit of the experience in terms of what we're doing here. I'm giving you a little bit more insight into the process. But today, we're just going to start by maybe making a short loop and then talking about how we can make it even better. If you're watching and when you're watching, definitely let me know in the comments what you're thinking. Give me some feedback, and we'll keep going with that. Crass already, welcome. Says, I have 100 of good 8 to 16 bar loops, 3 to 4 finished songs. I would say that was me for a long time. For a long time, that's how I worked. And I finally figured out some of the techniques for my own songwriting process, where now I do sometimes just get through a verse and a chorus, and then I decide if it's worth going on. But I almost always get to the point where it's a song form before I even commit to a short loop. And so I think that's something that's worth talking about. And Scott, yes. That's exactly right comment. I see our conversation led to a good video idea. And it's always a good video idea to brainstorm how to actually complete the music. And so I figure it's worth talking about endlessly. And it's one thing that I work with people in private lessons and when I do other outside of YouTube training, that comes up over and over and over again. How do we make songs that lead out? And so it's not just one person or one of us out there that's dealing with this. I think it's everybody. And so it's worth having that conversation continuously. Anyway, I debated this a little bit, but I was thinking maybe we could perhaps start with just Apple loops for a minute. And I think I don't know how I really feel about Apple loops. For those of you who've used Logic for a long time, these loops have been here for a long time. And so they're not like amazing. Some of them are actually decent, but if you're, using Slice or something else, then you have access to even more. But I want to keep this kind of the lowest common denominator, meaning those who are just using the basic Logic toolkit. So first and foremost, let's add a drummer track. And that's 8 bars by default. And let's switch out to a different style. Let me just hear what this sounds like and make sure we've got sound happening all the way through the stream. Right, so we find some sort of drum loop that we like, and we're going to go up to our little search engine here in the Apple Loops and find some sort of bass. See if we can find something that's even usable. And I do want to maybe filter this out by MIDI. That'll actually help me in some ways, because then I can actually play this bass more. That's a thing to think about. If you use an audio file for all of your loops, it's harder to actually expand that out unless it's something that you can use through the whole song, or you have a bunch of different versions of that audio loop with different progressions. If you don't, then it becomes a little bit trickier. Although, with something like a monophonic bass, there's certain things we can do to cheat a little bit. So maybe we could do either one, but let me just find an actual MIDI file for a minute. Whoa. Some of these are just so good. I mean, bad. Let's just pull this one out for a minute. L on the keyboard lets you loop. Then I can just drag that in. Oh my gosh, this is going to be driving me crazy. I don't like any of those things. Ooh, this may be a little trickier than I thought, but let's go down and we'll just play something here. And we'll loop that out. I am going to use the groove track right off the top just because that helps me keep things timing-wise organized. Okay, the drums we're going to have to change for sure. We're starting with just something because I want to just look at how we can take some of these things and change how they are. Ooh, that's interesting. What did it do? There we go. Looks like we need to change our recording mode. Maybe not. It's just like dumping MIDI everywhere for me. Thank you. Okay, so tips. Let's talk about this a little bit. So we have just this keyboard part, a bass part, and this drummer part, which the drums, I still think I'm going to have to change it to something else because it's not really a punk tune. I don't think that's the direction I'm going with that, but let's re-engage the groove. Okay, so this is like an ideal situation because I'm using the drummer, which means I can easily spread this out into other parts of the song. For instance, I can just option click, pull this over, and we could use the matrix here to slide it down to be more simpler and soft, maybe for a verse pattern. And so that's like a reason to use something like the drummer track. Turn off the bass. Right, so that's super easy. Let's look at an example of what to do if you are using like an audio file instead of a MIDI file, right? I mean, that's a situation that we've probably all found ourselves in. So here's one thing that that's really useful when using audio files, say drums. There we go. Okay, say we found this and we're like, man, this is the song. This is the whole song right here. And you have this looped out. That's all fine and good, except you're stuck with that. Now, we do have a similar vein of files here. That's what I was talking about before. We have breaks, driver beat 1 through 12, plus some fills. Right, that gets a little bit intense. I think that could be like a good section of a song, but maybe not the entire song. So one thing that Logic does that's really cool with audio files, I can drag this over to my header and say, I want this to be, for instance, let's do a quick sampler optimize, and this is going to turn it into a spliced or a sliced. So then I can control with my MIDI keyboard and reorganize the whole thing. Find some sounds I like here. They all sound so similar. But so we could use that kind of like a hi-hat. And program a whole new kit with that. So we're not stuck necessarily using the audio file as it is. This does a couple things when we're expanding a song. A, it lets us keep the similar sound. So we don't have to recreate the sound. We can just take the original sample, use the quick sampler, and then all of a sudden we have something that's very similar sounding, and we can go from there. We do have a few other tools that tie into that quite nicely. One of them would be, come on, open up. There it is. No, missed it. It's really finicky sometimes. There we go. The note repeat option here. So this allows us to set up essentially some parameters that when I hold the note down, it'll play according to those. And so I can do, for instance, we can use Aftertouch to do velocity changes. if your keyboard does aftertouch, that's the sensor that happens after you push the key. You can push it a little bit harder and it'll send aftertouch data. So I can actually and we can actually use that to do it. If we want to do eighth notes, we can do that instead. But in this case, like a 16th note pattern could be fun. So that feature, the note repeat feature, can help us do some of those rhythms, even if we're not like super great at playing the rhythms on the keyboard itself. So let's close that down for a second. So that's one of the things. If we're using audio files, great. Be ready to maybe break them apart and sample them. One of the other pieces to that is one of the older features where we can right-click on an audio file and say convert to new sampler track. That's the one I want. We're going to do transients, sampler, or even drum machine designer is a really cool option that they've added. This didn't used to be there before the drum machine designer, but we can use that. The drum machine designer, okay. Let's see if this does it. There's the pattern. And the reason why that's nice is because if we're then going to go into our step sequencer, I can actually use it to program this out. So we'll do it here, here. Ugh, my mouse. There we go. And that's super abrasive on my ears. So we'll have to do some velocity here. We'll just go a half time with that. Oh man, it's going to be hard to, sometimes it's hard to mangle some of the Apple loops because of the insanely good quality that they are. But still, I think it's worth looking at a variety of options with that. So convert to sampler track is another thing that we could do. In fact, I was going to show you this, or I was talking about it, but I haven't showed it with the bass part. If we have a bass that's an audio file, not that one, let's find. Right, so something crazy like that. Let's pull that out for a second. We'll do an optimized quick sampler. And I want to do classic, not the drum. But I'm going to shorten that down. Because I put it in the quick sampler and it's a monophonic sound, I can now play it. Even though it was originally just a one-shot bass part, I isolated that one part, and now we can use it just like that. We can even loop it if we find a looping spot. That this one's going to be hard to loop because it changes so much. We'll do a little crossfade on that. but we don't even have to use the loop functionality because if we just want to do it as a one shot, we can just turn off the looping. You'll notice it's like a traditional sampler. If I go lower, it uses like a sample rate function kind of thing where it spreads it out. And if I go higher, it gets really short. But we also have flex built into this so I can have it follow. And then because it's now a MIDI instrument, all of the other cool things we have here with arpeggiators. So again, if you're starting with an 8-bar loop and looking for ways to expand out your palette, and a lot of the stuff is like a bass that's an audio file, you can do the same technique where you drag it on to the quick sampler and break it apart, and then you can actually use that sound. So right now we're still talking about crafting our palette based off of the 8-bar loop, and we'll get to some more stuff in a minute. Producer One Mayhem is saying, when will Logic get stems? I mean, it seems like everybody else is starting to get them, so who knows? Crass is saying, I would love to try Logic on Vision Pro 2, just can't see $3,500. And it's, I mean, $3,500 is for the unit, right? Not the case, not the eye correction if you have glasses, not the warranty, there's other stuff. So it's really, most people are spending $4,000 or $4,500. Cool. And Tranquility actually brought it up first. I think it'll be interesting. You can actually use it on there as a screen share, but because Logic Pro for iPad is an app, it should theoretically be able to work as a 2D app in there, but I would love to see it as a full immersive experience. That's what I'm excited for. Okay. And Fraser, yes. That does make you a little bit of a dinosaur, but that's cool. Dinosaurs are cool. There's nothing wrong with being a dinosaur at all. Although I think a lot of my favorite features started really developing and maturing in 10.5. And so from there, we got some of the things I've been waiting for the longest, I think. Anyway, moving on. Okay, so how then do you actually take something that's a short loop and turn it into a song? Well, you have to stop thinking about music in terms of sections like that, small little things that you build up. You have to start thinking about it in terms of song form. I think that's one of the biggest things. You have to think about that before you actually get to the point where you are having to convert it. And so maybe start with it, but think about the groove. Think about how it's all fitting together. What elements of that loop do you really like the most? It's like, what is it about that, your slice files or whatever, that you really want to be a part of your song? For me, I almost always start with percussion elements. And as I've shown in a number of videos, one of my favorite techniques, of course, is to use the arrangement track because it really does help visualize it. So I did a video about this last night, not a live stream. And I went through what this is all about and how to use it. I think it's a great tool because it allows us to think about the song in a longer format. So automatically we're already pulling it out. And then with a tool like the drummer, where we can actually just pull out and have it build some of those elements from the beginning, then we start thinking about this in terms of a song already. I think the real key is stop making 8-bar loops. Maybe make an intro, right? That's the equivalent. We have an intro here that we can use as an example with this, but say we have this thing that's, I'm going to select all of those for a second. I'm going to pick a different style of music because I don't want just the Kyle drummer. Thank you, Kyle, for your service, right? For being such a hardcore drummer and the default for so many people. But I'm a little over Kyle. Right? So I might spend 10 minutes finding the right drum part or something to inspire me that has a certain feel to it, that has all the elements that I want from it. And then I start adding the other stuff. And it doesn't have to be me playing. None of this has to be me playing that much, but I do play quite a bit. In this case, let's add that electric piano back for a second, the default. And I'm going to, because I want to show that maybe you don't have to play too much, I'm going to load on the chord trigger. And the chord trigger is nice because it has keyboard voicings. Let's do like a pop left hand, or singers. Let's do a songwriter left hand. Right? I'm just playing one note at a time. Everybody can play one note at a time. So let's figure out something that's going to work. That's not going to work. Okay, maybe. Let me hear that drum again. Something that simple. Doesn't have to be more complicated than that at all. There we go. It's having a... Come on. But so I'm already thinking, how is this going to work as an intro into a verse? Because I already put the verse second, right? So I can't just think of this as an 8-bar loop anymore because I've established criteria that on the screen, in my head, with everything else, that I know something else is coming. That's part of it. It's part of like that whole setup is you can't just build an 8-bar loop anymore. You can't ever really think of it that way. Never think of a thing as all by itself. What did I play on that first one? See, I did... Oh, that's the chord. Let me see what the chords are showing me on the chord trigger. So... So just like C, G, F. And the other thing, my next tip is start thinking past just the songwriting process from the beginning. Start thinking about it as a sonic evolution in a way. Start thinking about the effects. Now, some of you may not know a ton about all the effects that are out there. How do I use an EQ? How do I use a compressor? How do I use reverb? And that should be one of your initial tasks, is to start sorting out what those tools do. Read a book, watch a video, but start so that when you're starting to build these things, you actually know how they're going to fit together in a way. I think of this a little bit as an orchestral thing, like an orchestra, like a film score or a video game soundtrack. When you write for an orchestra, you don't get to like say, I want a cello, but I want it to sound completely different, right? It's like a cello sounds like a cello. There's a certain amount of things that a cello player can do. They can play in a different style. They can maybe put more rosin on their bow and play a little grittier. There's some performance techniques, but it's going to be a cello and it has a set number of typical ways to do it. Well, that's not exactly the case with something like Logic. We can make anything sound like anything, but when an orchestral composer or arranger is putting it all together, they're thinking, man, I can't make this cello part sound different, but I could write the cello part differently. And so you might want to start thinking about, okay, I've got this keyboard part at the top, and it's not really fitting that well with the other stuff. But it might be that it just needs a little bit of sculpting in terms of its sound to get it out of the way of everything, right? So I'm going to get rid of the low frequency, pull out some of that muddiness in the middle and brighten it up just a little bit. That's with the EQ. That's without it. And then it's going to play a little bit nicer. And then the evolution of going from this intro into a verse is going to be smoother because we're thinking about the sonic place of each of these instruments. And then because it's an arrangement track, I'm like, you know what? I'm getting into that intro, but it's too short. So I'm going to just click that and drag it over. And we'll see if we can't. I think what we need here is some sort of bass, right? Let's use a synth bass maybe. I want to make this more of a synth type sound. Already thinking about, what's going to be happening next. And my keyboard, 88 keys, but I'm already like a third of the way down. And I want that to be lower without having to reach. So let's do transposition down an octave. So in the second time through that intro, maybe that'll be what we have. And let's dull that. See, I'm already again thinking sonically, I like how that sounds for the most part, but I want it to be a little bit more muted. So I just grab the filter on the synthesizer. Actually, I'm going to really quickly just boost ever so slightly right at the tip of that. It has that little bit of the bitingness, so it still comes through. And then I did a little aftertouch at the very end of that bass where I just pushed a little harder. It opens up the filter. That's one of the great things about the retro synth default patch. Has the aftertouch ready to go. So it just builds. I'm thinking already, because if I wasn't thinking about what comes next, I might not have done that little push on that synthesizer to lead into the next section, right? I'm thinking of transitions now. Like, how is this going to transition? Okay, I don't know. I am going to do one of my favorite techniques on the bass, which is stereo spread. I love stereo spread. You got to be really careful with stereo spread because it's a phase nightmare, and phase stuff is still real and can be an issue with monocompatibility, which people say, well, what's the deal with monocompatibility? And everything still, especially if we're going to be going into spatial audio, there are so many things that can happen. You do want to make sure you're doing okay, but I'm going to just do correlation meter immediately after that. That shows me if it's monocompatible. Right until the very end of the tail, it's good. So we're going to leave it. But I just wanted to make sure. I like thickening out that bass, widening it out. So a couple good comments. We're going to hit the comments for a second. Hey, LA Winter, how you doing? Labeling song sections and starting the arrangement process is always my best way to get out of the 8-bar loop jail. And that's what I'm saying too. It's like, you got to stop thinking of it as an 8-bar loop and start using it. Daddy Dave, thanks for making me say that. A good way is by taking a reference track and analyze it, splitting the section, and then go. We haven't talked too much. I should do a video about reference tracks. The problem with doing a video on reference tracks is that I can't play you any of my reference tracks. Partially because YouTube has this thing called, copyright protection. And so if I were to play a bunch of my reference tracks, it would just be a video that somebody else would make money off of. But we could talk about it. I use a reference track on almost everything because I want not only to keep myself in check with best practices of song form, but I also want to make it sure sonically that I'm hitting all the benchmarks. I want to make sure sonically it's going to work out and have the right levels and the right interesting things. I use that for a lot of things. Let's see. And then Fraser says, the ensemble blew up. Woo! Those things did last a long time. And I know a number of people who are still using them and they're waiting for them to blow up. And I almost got one at one point, and I'm so glad I didn't. You can see over my other video in the top right-hand corner. This is my SSL12 USB audio interface. I love this thing for a lot of reasons. Makes it so I can do streams and have a little bit better routing with it. Sounds great. The only thing I wish is that the big knob I could use to adjust my headphone level, since I'm not using speakers most of the time in this room. And so I would prefer to be able to make this my headphone knob instead of this teeny little one next to it. That's the only thing. And you're welcome for any help I've ever given you. Woohoo! Let's see. So let's talk then about what does go into the verse, right? And so far I have this chord, the trigger plugin, right? I'm just listening for what sounds good. I like that pattern a little bit. Let's just record something. I'm just gonna, again, we're gonna utilize loop functionality here because if I made a longer verse, I don't need to play it the same. But I am going to have to open up that chord trigger because I don't even, it's like that's the problem with chord triggers. I don't know what chords I'm playing off the top of my head. I can probably hear them, but I think I should, I'm going to look at them so I can see what I'm doing here. And they're not always the lowest note that you want to do. They're oftentimes in inverted states. It means maybe a triad, but they're pulling the third or the fifth down to the lower things. So in this one, nope, that's so an A. A. And because I just did a repeat of those chords, in the bass, I'm going to do this thing where I go, right, the first time. I'm going to go up halfway through so that when I go to the very end, I can go down. And that makes it sound like it's progressing even though the chords are just 2 times repeated. The Motu stuff, I always have loved the Motu stuff. I think it sounds good. It's relatively low noise and transparent. I have never heard anything bad about the Motu stuff. So that was a question in the chat from Fraser about the M4 that they just purchased. And Motu's finally evolving. They're not dinosaurs as much anymore because they are allowing class compliancy with some of their interfaces. I don't know if it's all of them or not. Someone can tell me in the chat, but that's a big deal for them. You always had to have their stuff installed, and now some of their things are class compliant, which means a few things. One of them being you can use it easily with like an iPad, which is nice. So we'll see. We're going to have to groove track that for sure. It's all over the place timing, but not bad. And I don't think I'm actually going to groove track it. I just listened to it. I'm going to quantize it though, maybe, but not 100%. Let's do like a 85%. Let's record something like that. I'm gonna have to EQ it a little bit. It's popping my ears a little bit funky. Okay. Okay, so chorus, right? We've got this intro and then a verse. Similar chords. That's so important, I think, to keep the harmonic identity similar. And so that should be one of the things you're thinking of as you're doing this. It's like, what are the things, the elements of if you're using a chord trigger, if you're using something that's creating the chords for you, what is it about those that's the identity of the song, right? So we're going to keep on trying that. And it helps that I'm using a chord trigger patch that's always related. But we're going to change, it's like we're doing contrast. We don't want to make the section sound too similar. We want to have some sort of contrast between them. So we're going to try that. I'm going to hear what the drums sound like in the chorus real quick. Then we'll go up. So it's bigger in the chorus. And that's okay. We're going to go bigger in the chorus. Then in the bridge, we can really step it back. And I changed my mind. I'm going to do that half as fast. I'm going to do it one more time. Yeah, just like that. Just keep it simple, I think. And let's see what chords I think we're doing. Okay, so the bass is just going to line up right with that. And let's do long held out bass notes too. Let's see if I can play the right notes up there. And we'll just add a little bit of note flavor at the end of that. If I want to do, because it's a thing of contrast, it's like I almost want to Command D the piano track, turn off that step effects. Oh, let's switch to that one. And actually like use a piano sound. That would. Maybe as a texture, I don't know if that'll work. Yeah, I don't know. Eek. Could be held out. Maybe a different step effects preset. That could. Let's see. A little too space alien. Let's find something else. So I'm looking for a preset that sounds a little bit like the other parts of the song, but is different. Because again, we're doing a different thing here, but I want it to sound related. I really like the rhythmic edge of that. Let's try it. It's not enough stuff coming through. So let's find one more, something else here. And we might have to, I don't know if I want to do too much, but let's pull the volume of the drums down just a hair. Let's do that again. See if I can't. I might, no, I don't know. That sounded. Does that really tie in enough? So then we go back and forth. Let's listen to the verse into the chorus. I actually think the bass in that chorus section is a little bit hot. I don't know if I need it in the other places, but I'm going to duplicate, not that one. I'm going to duplicate the bass track, pull this one down, and add a compressor. We're going to sidechain maybe off to the roots. We'll see if we can get, I don't know. It's like, I wanted just the kick of the roots, but I'll have to bust that out separately. Just to get the bass out of the way a little bit when the drums are hitting. And because now we're on a separate track, I actually have a different patch here. We're going to brighten it up a little bit. So everything's evolving. Bass started as a patch. The piano started as a patch. And then when it got to a point where I wanted it to be like in a different section of the song, I duplicated the track so that it's still starting the same place, but then manipulated it. So everything is still attached to each other. They're all organically coming from one another. And I think that really helps when you're taking something that's like an 8-bar thing and expanding it out, is remembering that everything should still be somewhat related. Now, you can always do something very different in certain sections of the song. The bridge is one of those sections where we can actually go through and do quite a bit of different stuff. And right there, that's really intense. I'm going to definitely simplify that down. No hand claps. And I think I'll cut out all the fills too. Halftime on the kick and snare. Right, so now it's like we're just going super chill on that. And yes, Fraser, the question in the chat about what audio interface, this is the SSL 12 from SSL. It's really great. Okay. So I guess I don't want to do the keys on this one. That's one of the things I want to be different. I don't want to use the same chord trigger. I want the bass and maybe the piano to be there. I really like this last thing that's happening. So we're going to maybe stick with that. I like that. So then we have this new thing. I think I'll start simple and add in the other part. And this bridge is never going to work just as that much. So we're going to need to double it. And let's do just glue that together. if that's going to work, but we're going to try it. Just a double, double, double. And then I took the original key part, but took off the chord trigger. Yeah, I think that's good. Flatten and get rid of whatever that thing is. And then let's see, just for how this goes, Option, click that section of the song with the chorus. And let's listen once into the chorus. Okay, what we're going to need to do to make this tie together is find something. I mean, that's such a, it's so different. That's not necessarily a bad thing always, but it certainly can be. We're going to split that last little bit of the drum part there and just put a massive fill into it. And then I don't know off the top of my head because I haven't done it in a long time, but let's see if we have a reverse something. Let's put that on. No, thanks to that. And we're going to gain this thing down quite a bit, I think. And we need to hit that right at the end, I think. There. Can I? There we go. A little bit more down on the gain. Just a little touch. Okay, one time through the song, we started with that introduction, got a few different things we liked, and then we slowly evolved it through the end of this. Okay, there's still, if I had to say there's one section that doesn't sound like it belongs as a transition, it's from that chorus into the bridge. And we'd have to do something there, like a fill right into the end of that, although there is a fill of some sort. But I'd have to do something else there to help that transition. That's the kind of thought process we have to take when we're expanding out. It's like I didn't have a chorus or a bridge or even a verse in my head before we started this. I started with just like some of my normal techniques in creating that introduction, and then the rest grew from this. But we do tend to fall into our own patterns, our own ditches as we do this, right? We're looking at what we want it to be like and we're making it that way, but we have these like things that we use. And so we're always trying to either capitalize on that and make it sound like a song that we're writing, or we're trying something new and we're trying to overcome the things that we always do. But if you listen to 5 seconds of the band U2 on the radio, you're going to know who it is, unless it's Coldplay, right? You're going to know who it is in that like seconds because they have a sound and they're using the same chord type stuff and the same progressions and the same instrumentations. So instead of always trying to sound different every single time, unless you're writing for somebody else, like embrace the things that are you and the things that sound like you. Because I think that's going to be important, is having that identity as a musician. In a day and age when AI, and Adobe, by the way, just announced that they're making a music AI where we already have seen this from other places, but obviously if Adobe is doing it, they're going to do it pretty well. Text to music, and also you can like put a melody in there and it will finish it and orchestrate it and do an arrangement. We're at the point now where it's not about creating the next generic beat. We're at the point where you need to be yourself and something that AI can't just replace. Do something that means something to you, and people will want to hear it, because if they know you and you are someone who has relationships with people, it's going to be different than what AI can do. And so I think that's the most important thing. Anyway, we're out of time. I got to run. Thanks for being on the stream or watching it later. And hopefully this was helpful.